Thank you for coming on this evening. I'm Sudan, the coordinator of the Son of Writing Speaking. Every year at the Writers Festival, the Son of Writing Speaking is glad to be a part of supporting the week-long festival, promoting a culture of writing on the campus, and especially hosting this ASC Finalists Readings, which is the official kickoff event for the Writers Festival. For those who may need to be filled in on how the Writers Festival content comes about, every year, undergraduate and graduate students enrolled in colleges and universities in the state of Georgia enter their creative writing work in 4 categories: poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction, and dramatic writing. Entries are judged by a group of writers who are not associated with the host college, and the finalist works are published in the annual festival magazine. During the festival week, the guest writers then choose a prize winner for each of the 4 categories. For this year's 43rd Annual Writers Festival, we are proud to have 5 ASC student finalists among the 21 finalists for their fiction, creative nonfiction, and dramatic works. Tonight, they'll be reading excerpts of their works and officially starting off the Writers Festival. The readers will be according to the order on the program, and we'll start off with Carmen Cook for a piece titled as The Eighth Wonder. Please welcome Carmen.
Yeah, my friend.
Okay, so just a little background on my essay. I work in the Italian restaurant near Emory University, and I get a lot of interesting questions at that restaurant. So the structure of the essay is kind of like different conversations that I've had with people at my tables. I've always thought that my curly hair came from my grandmother, but if it is that important to you, I guess I could tell you that my great-great way back grandfather may have had something to do with it. I imagine that his hair was always neatly combed and presentable, as he was the son of a plantation owner. That hair, mixed with my great-great way back grandmother's likely kinky hair, had a major impact on why you're so fascinated today. I try to keep it straightened while I'm working here so that you don't feel the urge to touch my hair as you're in the process of asking my permission to do so. My apologies for tipping you today. Would you mind passing me that glass? It's a little hard to reach across this table to fill it with water. Height wasn't one of the things that I inherited. I carry myself with confidence and ooze intelligence because I am both of those things. I learned them from my mother. Another customer asked me if I was from somewhere in Europe. I was extremely confused by it because I'm not a really big geography person. So I just later assumed that Black European women are super classy in order to turn an awkward situation into a compliment. Can I get you another glass of sweet tea, ma'am? What's that? Do I know the significance of my name? Of course I do. Would you like to hear about the time that I chose not to perform La Habanera for my district piano recital because I thought it would be too corny? I won that year and every year after. I won every year before that too, but you didn't ask about that part. I can tell you about the miniature busts that rest atop my piano when I play. Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Chopin, they all stare breathlessly to see what I'll turn out next. I also learned how to play the saxophone during my middle school years, although I regret never learning how to play my favorite song, Ribbon in the Sky by Stevie Wonder. On my wedding day, I'll just ask my cousin EJ to play it for me instead. I passed my saxophone along to him, and he's worked wonders with it ever since. My sister Kirsten passed it along to me. She nicknamed it Chipmunk Holyfield, but nobody's sure why. What do I not play? I don't know how to play the guitar yet, but I'm working on it. I would take lessons, but I'm here most of the time working. My 17-year-old niece does play the guitar, and she sings like an angel. Maybe she can teach me when I have more time. I go to ASC. Yes, it's a great school. I'm a creative writing major and a history minor. No, I don't want to be a teacher. Here's the extra bread that you asked for. No, you didn't get me off track at all. Curious minds always want to know about ASC. You want to know how I ended up with this particular name? It's a pretty funny story, but my father still doesn't think so. Camille was his intention, but my mother aspired to something completely different. She wanted my first and middle initials to match my sister's initials. K for Kirsten and Q for Keon. She also really wanted a Coke when it was time for my birth certificate to be signed. It just so happened that when Daddy left to get her a coat, they entered the room with the birth certificate. That's why I stand in front of you today and not Camille. Mama always gets what she wants. I'll definitely get you a Coke after a story like that, sir. I don't know any specifics of what region my ancestors may have come from. None of them had the time to document anything, I'm sorry. They were too busy being chained to each other and stacked like mere cargo, wallowing in their own filth mixed with everybody else's. I'm just as uncertain of my past as they were of their futures. The chances of our paths ever crossing are pretty much slim to none. Sorry to disappoint you. It must be nice to know of your German, Hungarian, Icelandic descent and to compare notes with your friends and family. As you sit at my table, I envy how naive you are to the history around you. All of your culture and education blinds you to the fact that I can be like you and not like you at the same time. Because I am cultured, I could not be entirely from enslaved people. Because I am cultured, I should be able to unpack every detail of my past. Would you like some Parmesan cheese on your pasta? No, you didn't offend me at all. But I do hope you leave here today knowing who I am as opposed to what I am. So many times in a week, I get asked questions about my potential mixed racial identity and my country of origin. For years, I've simply assumed that I was a black girl from the country. Apparently, in the city, people require a bit more explanation of these things. You have a wonderful rest of the day. Come back and see us next time. From Paulin Ingwerson, and the title of her essay is When Emmy Went Missing.
Hi guys. That's the problem. Okay. For a little bit of context, I got the idea for this short story after walking home, back to campus from Avery Glen at about midnight after having watched American Horror Story. So if that kind of preps anybody for what you're in for, super. Okay. When Emmy went missing. Emmy went missing at 6 in the afternoon. It wasn't even late in the day. The sun was still up, people were out places running errands and living their lives, and nobody even noticed when she stopped being. And yes, I know she didn't stop being, but she isn't here, and when someone's not right in front of you, how do you know they exist anymore? On the first day of physics last semester, Mr. Doherty tried to explain Schrödinger's cat to us, and told us that if you couldn't observe something, you couldn't prove its existence. Emmy didn't get it then. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not here, she told me. Like air, right? I wonder if she gets it now. She's probably dead anyway, same as the cat, so like it even matters. The sun was up and bright when she went missing, and I bet that if someone had been standing around to notice, they could have read every single stupid letter on that license plate or whatever big white van pulled up to pull Emmy in and drag her off. Because it's always a big white van with two dark-eyed men with ski masks instead of names. Emmy went missing on November 22nd. One day she was there, and then she was just gone, like a magician's rabbit vanishing back into the hat, like never pulled it out in the first place, like it had never been there at all. And since everybody thinks I'm some child who can't handle real life, nobody would tell me right away. Nobody would give it to me straight what had happened, except for my brother, who said things like that just happen sometimes. But I never asked him what he thought about it. He just thinks he knows everything because he's home from college, and apparently that makes you worldly. So now he thinks everybody wants his opinion all the time, which they don't. Emmy had a crush on my brother. She used to convince me to go with her to his baseball games when he was in high school, when he played for the Alexander Penn High Porcupines. I hate baseball. She hates baseball. But she'd sit there and stare at him in his uniform and cheer like she knew what she was doing, and then she'd nudge me until I invited her to stay for dinner afterwards so she could listen to my brother repeat the whole game all over again while she stared at him with her big brown doe eyes. Hated. Emmy hated baseball. It was just so interesting. She used to gush, lying on the floor of my room and staring up at the Eric Clapton poster on my ceiling. He says such clever things, and he's athletic too. Your brother, he's a Renaissance man. I wondered how being a baseball playing know-it-all made him a Renaissance man, and I wondered if I had been a Renaissance man too if I didn't have glasses as thick as the bottom of Coke bottles. I never told her about the time that I went to get my brother after baseball practice and saw him screwing Amanda Roll in the dugout, because if I told her, I would have had to watch her heart shatter into a dozen little shards that I'd have to pick up and glue back together, and I didn't want to do that because I could cut my hands on them. Emmy went missing on Maple Street. And Maple Street, it's right down the shopping lane between Park Road and Church Street, and it's busy down there. And Sammy's Pizza, where everyone goes to get great pop and cheese slices and play pinball after school, it's right there. And the dusty bookstore with the cat that hisses at kids is there. And the second-hand store run by the Jamaican lady is there. And Maple Street's always really busy, and maybe not as busy at November at 6 o'clock as it might have been in July at 6 o'clock, but there were still plenty of people. There should have been enough people to notice. Maybe she didn't go missing on Maple Street. Maybe she went missing in a dark alley. That's always where you're supposed to go missing from when you go missing, and nobody said she went missing from Maple. They just said it was the last place she was seen. And maybe nobody saw her go because no one was looking at her. She was so proud of herself how she swore she could fade back and disappear if she wanted to. I never told her that nobody could miss her since her big floral skirts, if those didn't catch someone's attention, then the cracking noise when she popped the big handfuls of chiclet gum she was always chewing, or the clacking of her big wooden bangles would, because I used to hear that clacking and follow it right to her. I still hear it sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep. I can't chew chiclets anymore. Can't stand the smell. She didn't even do anything wrong. She didn't walk around at night or in that neighborhood. She's scared of the dark. She'd never do that. And I was usually with her. And I'm a big guy, so of course I was always a good escort, but I wasn't there that day. And I wasn't there because I'd been sick. And even if I hadn't been sick, I was planning to fake it that day anyway, because Mr. Garber was handing out calc tests, and I hate calc because it's almost as bad as trig, and wild horses couldn't have dragged me to school that day. But maybe if I'd gone, I could have walked her home, and maybe if I'd walked her home, we wouldn't be having this stupid conversation because Emmy would still be here. Emmy went missing walking home from school. Everyone at school keeps treating me funny. Half of the school stares at me, and the other half won't look at me. Half of them nod their heads real slow and say in these morbid tones, "It's okay, I understand. If you need me, we can talk." Like they're suddenly these little saints or psychiatrists or something. The other half won't talk to me at all. The only person I want to talk to is Emmy. Sarah Mayfather came walking up to me yesterday after Kim with the most awful look painted on her face. I'd never trusted Sarah, not since the 7th grade, when she had a crush on me and kept trying to convince me to try out for drama club in the hopes that maybe someday they'd put on Romeo and Juliet, and maybe someday she'd play Juliet, and maybe someday I'd play Romeo, and then maybe someday we'd get to kiss and 6 years of plotting could come to a head. But I wouldn't do it, and guess what? It's junior year, and the drama club still hasn't put on that awful play. And so she hasn't had the chance to kiss anyone, except for Joni Schmidt's pet iguana once on a dare in sophomore year from what I've heard, and she still can't shake the name Lizard Lips. "Hey," she said in this soft, sensory little voice, "how have you been feeling?" "Fine." I stared at her, and she nodded somberly like I'd just said something very wise. Good, but I just wanted to talk to you and see how you've been doing." And while she's talking to me, I'm just staring at those lizard lips. How chapped they are, like she needs a tube of cherry chapstick, something fierce, and she's just blabbering on at me about God's plan and how everything works out the way it's supposed to. And I gave her this look that could have wilted every plant the 4-H club ever grew, and then I turned around and hooked it out of there, leaving Sarah gaping at me with her lizard lips. I like the ones who leave me alone better. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to bring Emmy back. And if I can't have her back with her crooked teeth smiles and her frizzy hair bouncing when she walks and her warm hands with the chipped red Revlon nail varnish, then at least give me the mouth and the hair and the hands alone. I need to see her and know she didn't vanish into thin air. All I want is a body. Emmy would have hated that. She cried when we had to dissect frogs in class. I felt sick, but since she was my lab partner and she wouldn't do it, I had to do it instead. But they wouldn't have to dissect her body. They know what's in those things already, just hearts and livers and bones, and if she's gone, then it's all just meat. Emmy always wanted to be a vegetarian. Maybe because her cousin was a proper hippie who burned her bra and started living barefoot on a commune, and Emmy thought her cousin was the grooviest lady she'd ever met. And she made a big deal of it last year on Thanksgiving when she wouldn't touch the turkey, and she made her grandmother cry because of it, and then Emmy cried to me because she felt so bad. She had to try to be vegetarian after that, not from her family. Emmy was all alone when she went missing. You miss her, don't you? The pastor said to me last Sunday after service. I didn't feel like going, but since my parents seem to think that church is the best thing for me right now, I went. And it's easier to just go along and make them happy than try to fight it. They'll win in the end, one way or another. So I nodded at him, but didn't say much, because the less you say, the more people fill in the gaps on their own, and that suits me just fine these days. Because I couldn't tell him that no, I didn't miss her. Missing her would hurt sometimes, and I didn't feel that. I felt dead inside, like when she'd gone, I'd been cut open and had everything inside scraped clean like a jack-o'-lantern and then put back together. And I could put on a grin, but there's nothing in there, nothing at all, and I can't remember what it felt like to feel whole. I heard you two spent a lot of time together. And I side-eyed him because I really wasn't sure where he was going with that. When the police said the same thing, I knew where they were going, but I was pretty sure it wasn't my pastor's job to accuse me of homicide. It's hard to lose anyone at your age, but a girlfriend in particular. I figure I must have made some kind of face because then he nodded all sage like he'd unlocked the mysteries of the world and teenage hearts. He must have thought he'd figured it all out and nobody else had, and he was this genius who cracked the code why I was so upset over this. God forbid I just missed my friend. I must have been in love with her. There's no other sensible alternative. Emmy used to be real into occult stuff, tarot, whatever, crystals and candles, all that jazz. And she used to read these hippie books about what dreams meant and what the day you were born said about your personality. And this one time, she read this book about true love and soulmates. And then when it was over, she sat me down and she said to me, I think we're soulmates. And at the time, I laughed at her because it was the craziest thing I'd heard in my whole life, and I'd never hear another crazier thing until 6 months later when my mom would sit me down and tell me Emmy had gone missing. No, really, she insisted. I read this book, and it said soulmates don't have to be a couple. They could be like a tree or a dog. Ew, I interjected. Shut up, it's not like that. What I'm saying is you don't have to be romantic with your soulmate. Maybe sometimes it's just this living thing that's on the same plane of existence as you are. And something that understands the way that you think. And they were put on earth by God just to make sure they have a match. And maybe soulmates have their own lives and marry other people and only speak once a year or something, but they'll always be connected because that person just gets you. And I told her she was crazy. Because all I could see were those gross Precious Moments dolls my aunt collects and all the sappy little poems about true love, and I couldn't ever see Emmy in that way. But it's been 3 months since Emmy went missing. And the longer she's gone, the more I'm sure I'm never going to get her back, and the more I'm sure that I've lost the one person in the world who got me how no one else did. Emmy went missing on November 22nd, 1971 at 6 in the afternoon. And sometimes, I wish she'd taken me too. Thanks. Next up, we have obituaries by Jessica Meja.
Just a little bit of background info. This piece is formatted like a newspaper clipping and is inspired by the Catchment line. The Tribune, Monday, July 16, 1951, page 17, obituaries. Van Caulfield, the 20-year-old artist who had lived in a secluded wooded area from the time he was 1, which provided him the inspiration for the abstract painting that won him the coveted art award and made him an international star in the avant-garde world, was found dead last night from suffocation in his studio apartment in Paris. He leaves behind a red cap.
personal essay as a good one. A little bit of background, it's kind of making fun of, dictionaries and very, prestigious essays with, footnotes. So definitely this isn't as complete. It's better if you read it. So if you read it, you'll notice I have footnotes that kind of make fun of that sort of thing. As good as a thimble. Amen. We say it at the end of every prayer. So I thought it'd be good if I started my essay with it. The word amen is a funny little thing. Its intended purpose is to end things, like the phrase, "it shall be done," or "so be it." But with us, it doesn't have to be. It can be used as an agreement, such as I approve, or a compliment to the pastor if he's doing a wonderful sermon, or simply an exclamation of happiness. My grandma Sadie always wanted a refrigerator when she was a housewife in the 50s. She got her wish in 1956. It was a brand new Frigidaire refrigerator with a self-making icebox. Without fail, every time she opened it, she'd exclaim, "Frigidaire, amen!" To this very day. And to this very day, she exclaims that phrase at any time she gets food out of a refrigerator, regardless if it's a refrigerator. John Brown, or Brown John. He was born May 9th, 1800, and died December 2nd, 1859. Martyr or a madman? That question has lingered with white people and A-push textbooks for over 150 years. Well, obviously, he must be a madman. What sane, good Christian white man would put his life down on the line for some niggers during the 19th century? What man in his right mind would steal George Washington's personal swords and pistols, believing those items would invoke a revolution across the nation and inspire slaves to overthrow their masters? Why on earth would a white man kill other white men for those only considered 3/5 of a man? John Brown, that's who. Or as my grandfather would say, the only white man who gave a damn about me, and pours 2 drinks for himself, one for Brown every year on Brown's birthday. Double consciousness, a term created by W.E.B. Du Bois in his book, The Soul for Black Folks. Here's an excerpt. It is a particular sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, 2 souls, 2 thoughts, 2 reconciled strivings, 2 warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. I like to think nowadays that this has evolved into a mental filter, or a filing cabinet. I used to look down on black kids who couldn't act right or acted ghetto around white people, but now I envy them. It must be nice not having to be trapped between the white and black world, or being constantly aware of your own race when you're the only black kid in the room. Must be real nice. Ebonics. No language is above any of the others. I repeat, no language is above any of the others. Unfortunately, the act of speaking Ebonics is looked down on. It's been debated by many linguistics on whether Ebonics is a different dialect of English or a mixture of African language and English and is a whole new language in itself. Ebonics was derived from enslaved Africans learning English by ear, as well as being able to communicate with other Africans from different parts of Africa. Over the years, African Americans expanded that language into what we hear today. Ebonics is not slang. Slang comes and goes, but Ebonics has evolved over time. For a black person to speak Ebonics today would cause many to think that person is stupid, uneducated, or simply too black. It's very sad when a black person's intelligence is judged by how well they enunciate a language that was forced down their ancestors' throat. Frederick Navarro. The boy who called me nigger the first time in my life. I was in 7th grade. I pretty much was just walking right past him and he blurted it out. 2 thoughts went through my mind. The first one was, I wonder if I'll get suspended if I punch him. The second was, wait, he's Filipino, aren't we on the same side? That day I considered the day of the birth of my black consciousness, my epiphany. Ghetto, and originally an Italian term for the place of living of Jews in Europe, contains the word get, which is the Suffolk meaning of slag, or trash. High John the Conqueror. In African American folktales, the most famous amongst the enslaved Africans was the trickster, High John the Conqueror. High John was a demigod and walked on the ocean floor underneath the slave ships all the way to America. Most of his stories entail him making a fool out of old massa or outsmarting the patty rollers. He'd often disguise himself as a slave or an old African man. He was meant to bring joy to the slaves when they had none, and some of his stories even had codes for where to go when slaves were planning to run away. He was an inspiration for Burr Rabbit and many other trickster-type characters. With the abolishment of slavery, there was no need for High John anymore. He was recently brought back to life by Zora Neale Hurston in one of her short stories. In the story, he teaches a whole plantation of slaves how to fly, and all old Massey can do is watch. KKK. Founded in Pulaski, Tennessee, the Ku Klux Klan was created by Civil War Confederate veterans meant to keep the newly freed slaves frightened and oppressed. The origin of the white sheets was to cover their identity as well as pretend to be ghosts of killed Confederate soldiers. In 1915, the KKK placed their headquarters in Stone Mountain, Georgia. When my parents moved to Stone Mountain in 1993, 2 years before I was born, my father claimed he could see crosses burning on the edge of the mountain. That was also the year my father bought a gun for the first time in his life. Luckily, the KKK went bankrupt a year later and dispersed, along with the passing of a law that all current KKK members would be on surveillance by the Atlanta Police Department. Mammy. The archetype is usually for a large, homely black woman who used to take care of white children of rich families in the South. My great-grandma Julie was a nanny for a white family in Arkansas. My mother would always tell me about the stories of great-grandma Julie and how she raised two white boys who loved her more than their own mother. But the part of the story that always stuck out in my mind was when the white lady asked who was interviewing her if she had recently had babies. When Julie said yes, the lady hired her on the spot. Julie then found out that the woman also just had a child and wanted her to be a wet nurse. But she couldn't just pick up the white baby. Oh no. To feed the baby, my great-grandmother had to have the infant wrapped in a blanket and had to put a terry cloth napkin on the baby's cheek so it wouldn't touch her dark skin on her breast as it suckled. Nigger, nigga. Now, definition of nigger. A name coined for the descendants of the enslaved Africans, usually used more for males than females. In current times, it's often used as a racial slur where a different ethnicity, usually Caucasian, exercises their need to show their social superiority. Example, get off my porch, you nigger. Definition of nigga. 1. A term used by fellow African Americans, usually to scorn another black person for shaming the race. Example, ain't that a shame? If Marcus keeps acting like a nigger, he's gonna end up in jail. 2. A term used by fellow African Americans, usually as a form of endearment or friendship. Example, use my nigga, you know that? I'll always have your back. Number 3, the word that comes before please. Nigga, please, there's no way that shit's going down. O.J. Simpson. Yeah, he did it. And you can keep him, white people. Quilts. During the times of slavery, slaves had to find a way to communicate with each other secretly when it came to escaping. After Negro spirituals, quilts were used to pass codes between one another. And there was a quilt with a big red X on the window that meant old Massa was watching, so act natural. And there was a quilt with a northern star stitched on the front that means that someone from the Underground Railroad was coming. If the quilt was primarily blue, that meant that if you were going to run away, the best bet was to wade through water to throw off the dogs. Sick kitten. Child, stop acting like a sick kitten on a hot brick. This is a saying from my grandfather. It usually means stop whining or acting lazy. Through my family, I learned that we had many sayings that have been passed down from our family, such as, you gonna believe me or your lying eyes. And then there was that one in our family that goes back to the times of slavery. There's weevils in the wheat, meaning there's a traitor in our midst that means to tell old Master. Topsy. The topsy-turvy doll was a double-ended doll. These went into mass production after the Civil War and were given to little Southern girls to play with. The white end of the doll was named Ava. She was said to be well-mannered, beautiful, kind-hearted, and honest. The black end of the doll was named Topsy, who was a recently freed slave girl who was said to have nappy hair, was loud and obnoxious, and always broke things around the house and told lies. Sears was one of the main companies that marketed the dolls during the 1950s. Umoja. one of the 7 principles of the African American celebration of Kwanzaa. It is considered one of the most important. It's considered the most important out of the 7 of them. It means unity, to strive for and to maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Venus Hottentot. No one knows her actual birth date, but before 1790, and she died at December 29, 1815. No one knows her original name, but her English name was Sarah Bartman. Bartman was an orphaned African girl and was sold to an animal trainer in England and was put on display as a circus freak because of her large breasts, butt, and arms, and was called the Hottentot Venus. She was seen as exotic and beautiful, but also savage. When the circus went out of business, she was sold to a college in France where she was examined as a specimen. She became famous for how large the labia on her vagina was, and scholars from all around Europe came to inspect it. The scholars wondered how her breasts and thighs were so large even though she ate regular meals just like them. When she died, she was dissected, her vagina and brain pickled in jars, and her skeleton was put on display in the National History Museum in France. It wasn't until 2002 Nelson Mandela demanded that her remains be brought home and buried. My mother did a one-woman show of Bartman and played Bartman. My mother has wide hips, big breasts, thick thighs, and is one of the most beautiful women in the world. At the end of the one-man play, my mother acts as Sarah and screams in pain as they dissect her and tear her apart, and I quote, like hyenas clawing at meat. Yellow. High yellow is black slang for a black person who has really light skin. It's mostly used in a derogatory way because black people have assumed for years that the lighter your skin, the farther you'll get in life. And for the most part, they've been right. Some black people are so high yellow, they can pass, which means they can pass as a white person and try to hide their black roots. Zion. The term Zion is often affiliated with Jerusalem for the Jews. Jerusalem is seen as a safe haven or a promised land. In Jewish mythology, wherever Zion is mentioned, it's usually when the Jews are in Babylonian captivity. The enslaved Africans in America saw themselves as the Jews and adopted the word Zion as a word for freedom or civil rights. Thank you. And next we have the story of Matilda, and it's going to be read by Stella Cobzo.
Hi everyone, I'm Stella Jo, and today I'm going to read several selections from my one-act play, Matilda. And here I've invited my friend Martin to read with me, and Mallory is my stage director.
Matilda, a play in one act by Stella Jo. List of characters. Cecily Reese, a 30-year-old housewife. She's married to a successful businessman who does not come home very often. Cecily will be played by Stella. Team. Cecily's neighbor. He's very busy and ambitious realtor who is suffering from the financial crisis of the 2008. He's slightly jealous of the business success and fortune. Today, Tim will not appear in our selections. Ruth, a 60-year-old woman. She's Tim's mother, a lonely and annoying old lady. Ruth will be played by Mei Qing. Scene. The living room of Reese's fancy house in Bel Air, a suburb of Maryland. Time, Thanksgiving night in 2008. Setting, the living room of the Reese's fancy house in Bel Air, a suburb of Maryland. The audience can see a sofa, a television set, a bookshelf, a coffee table with a knife, some facial tissues, and a bottle of wine on it in front of the sofa. And a side table with a disc player, some family photos, and a makeup mirror on it. At Rice, Cecily Reese is all dressed up in expensive clothes and holds a makeup mirror. Cecily applies red lipsticks over and over again, with no facial expression.
Because there's only limited time for us today, we will have to read only several selections, but I will summarize the storyline in the middle for everyone to follow. At the beginning of the story, Cecily is going to commit suicide alone in her house. When she's counting her sleeping pills, her neighbor Tim knocks her door and begs her to take care of his mother for a few hours because of a business emergency. Tim's mother, Ruth, is an arrogant old lady. She dislikes Cecily at a first sight. Tim already told Ruth about Cecily's daughter, Matilda, but he didn't know that Matilda is already dead in an accident, or that Cecily is heartbroken and is about to commit suicide. Cecily enters. She has gotten a new bottle of wine, some cake, and hot tea ready.
Oh, Mr. Reese would have helped me. What does he know about Mr. Reese anyway? And where's that old woman now?
Cecily looks around.
Ruth? Where are you, Ruth? You know you can't enter any other rooms, Ruth. Where are you?
Ruth enters and sits down.
I was just walking my son to his car.
You need to tell me before you go to other places. If anything happens to you, it's my responsibility, okay?
Jesus, don't be so serious. I'm not a kid. I can't take care of myself.
Ruth noticed the watch.
Do it.
That's not for you.
Cecily puts down the hot tea.
This is for you.
Cecily puts down the cake.
And here, I got you some cake, in case you tell your son you starved in my house.
Well, where's the family reunion?
What?
You know, when your mom and dad coming. They are coming, like you said, right?
Right. You know what? I just recalled. My parents are going to my sister's house this year, so it'll be just you and me tonight.
Of course. Absolutely.
Ruth rolls her eyes without Cecily noticing. Cecily sits down on the sofa.
Where's your husband, Mr. Reese?
He's at work.
On Thanksgiving?
What's with the huh?
Ruth puts down the teacup, unpleasant.
You know he's out there fooling around, don't you?
How could you say that? My husband is a decent man. He never...
Well, I don't mean to upset you. What do I know? I'm just an old woman.
So, you came to see Tim? I wonder what could possibly go wrong with him at work on the Thanksgiving night, that he has to leave you with a neighbor. Well, what do I know? I'm just a housewife.
Ruth looks a little furious.
You don't need to get back at me like this. I'm only telling you the truth, not that I care or anything. It's your husband, not mine. I kicked mine out of the house the moment I caught him in bed with my sister.
Cecily stands up and wants to go off stage.
Hey, where are you going?
I've got something to do.
What? You got something better to do than talking to me?
It's important and private.
Ruth shrugs and eats her cake. Cecily goes off stage. Ruth wanders around the living room and picks up the family photos on the side table to take a look.
Look at this. Well, there they are. Mr. and Mrs. Reese.
Ruth looks at other photos.
Where's that baby girl?
Cecily enters.
What are you doing?
Ruth puts down the photo.
Nothing. Oh, here's the cake.
Ruth reaches for the plate. Cecily dodges Ruth.
You can't just go through others' stuff like that, okay?
Just family photos. What's the big deal?
It is a big deal to me. It's supposed to be private.
Whatever you say. They're your photos.
Later, Ruth demands Cecily to do several things for her, like turning the TV on and watching with her, getting her some more hot tea and cake, and asking Cecily to get her a book while Cecily does it. Finally, Cecily can't take it and calls Ruth a bother. Ruth is shocked and upset. She goes out for a walk and Cecily decides to finish her job of committing suicide. Ruth goes off stage. Cecily frowns and looks in Ruth's direction for a few seconds. She takes out a pill bottle and sighs. She puts all the pills in her hand and clenches and trembles.
Cecily, you there?
Cecily's in daze. She stares at the pills in her hand and trembles. A knock on the door.
Cecily, open the door. I forgot my coat is snowing. I'm dying. Hurry up.
Cecily signs. Put the pills back in the bottle again and puts the bottle in her pocket. She stands up and lets Ruth in. Ruth runs in and sits on the sofa.
Want some tea?
Don't bother. I'm still angry.
Ruth, I'm really sorry for what I said. Can I do anything to make you feel better?
When I was outside, I saw family dancing in their house. What about you put some music on? Let's dance.
I don't dance.
I haven't danced for decades. Not after I got the divorce.
I'm sorry, but I can't dance. You can dance on your own.
Ruth, turn some music on with the display.
Then watch me.
Ruth holds the wine glass and sways slow.
Cecily, what are you waiting for? Come on.
I told you, I don't dance.
Come on, I'm not complimenting you, but an elegant lady like you does not know how to dance.
I'm not quite in the right mood.
It's Thanksgiving. When can you be in the right mood more than now?
Not everyone is as happy as you. No one is as miserable as I am.
Ruth turns the music off and looks at Cecily.
I'm sorry, you think you are the only miserable one? I've been divorced for 20 years. I've lived alone for 20 years. I can't even have a Thanksgiving dinner for my son at the age of 60. But am I whining all night? No.
You don't understand.
What could possibly be wrong with you? At least you're still married. At least you still have your daughter.
You are absolutely right. Now, if you excuse me, I really need to get this done right now. Can I get you anything else?
I'll let you know.
Fine.
Ruth wants Cecily to show more care to her. She tries to convince Cecily that there is nothing else for her to live for, and that she wants to end her life. Cecily is furious when she found out that this is just a house. She yells at Ruth, but Ruth doesn't know Cecily's plan of committing suicide.
Okay, what's going on here?
Don't act like you don't know anything. You already knew what happened to Matilda, right? You already knew why I'm upset, right? Your son must have told you about the accident, right? You know everything and you just want to make fun of me.
Cecily, what's going on? I swear, Tim doesn't know it. I don't know a thing.
Cecily finally shows her intention to commit suicide and her desire to meet her dead child, Matilda, who died in an accident. Ruth thinks it's a stupid idea and shows no sympathy. Cecily takes out a pill bottle out of her pocket.
See? I've got everything ready. I'm gonna see my baby tonight.
Wait, don't do it until Tom comes to pick me up.
I'm pretty sure he'll be here any minute.
Just call him and ask.
I didn't know you wanted to leave so soon.
Well, you know me, hate to bother anyone.
Cecily calls Tim.
Hey, Tim. Hey, it's Cecily Reese. Listen, your mom wants to know when...
Ruth takes the phone from Cecily's hand.
Son, come pick me up right now. Of course you can leave. Let me talk to them then. No? Tell them it's a family emergency. Tell them Mrs. Reese is about to kill herself and call Mr. Reese right now. Yes, call them. Oh, it's not a joke, silly boy. This is real. This is more than real. She has the pills and everything ready. Why do you think I need to leave right away? You...
Cecily takes the phone from Ruth's hand and hangs up.
Are you out of your mind? Why did you tell him?
Why not?
Holy, you're drunk.
Cecily panics, wanders around the room and talks to herself.
What now? Tim will stop me. Tim will tell my husband. He'll lock me out. I'll never see Matilda again. Never. I'll be all alone all again.
Cecily, would you stop? You're giving me a headache.
All alone again, and it's all your fault.
Ruth looks dizzy and sits on the sofa.
Cecily, I'm not feeling well. Cecily, give me another piece of cake.
Cecily points at the door.
Leave. Leave right now. I'm going to see Matilda. I don't have time for you.
Don't you want me as company?
Look around. I am all alone. I'll always be alone. I'll always be by myself.
Cecily sits on the sofa and shouts at Ruth.
Are you blind?
Ruth does not talk. She struggles to stand up and turns on the music. She walks toward Cecily and shows one of her hands.
Mrs. Cecily Reeves, may I have the honor of this dance?
This is not the end of the play, and if you like it, and I hope you do, please check the Writers Festival magazine to read the whole play. And don't forget to attend other amazing events this Thursday and Friday. And there will be readings and book signings and Q&A sessions by our guest writers. And thank you all for being here tonight. It's been a huge honor for all of us.